Members of the U.S. Congress are done with the cover-up. They are fighting back against the secrecy, as are UFO whistleblowers, known and unknown, as are members of our media, as are Americans and citizens of our world. This avalanche that we are witnessing, which has accelerated, I like to refer to as the cosmic bounce back of righteous proportions. In the immortal words of Representative Tim Burchett,
we're done with the cover-up.
That statement was made by Burchett during a press conference in July discussing the upcoming UFO hearing that we all watched that had the witnesses David Grush, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, and Commander David Fravor. We are basically experiencing waves of disclosure, one after the other. They get bigger and stronger and more frequent as time unfolds. They are relentless, just like the Jedi. Just last November 30th, Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, Jared Motzkowitz of Florida, and others held a congressional bipartisan press conference that expressed absolute frustration and disdain at the Department of Defense's and intelligence agencies' unwillingness to be transparent on the UFO issue. To them, our representatives, to the American people, and to the world. The UFO cover-up that persisted and has been going on for 70 plus years did so in an environment with limited pushback and suspicion from our legislative branch and journalists. Those days are becoming far less typical, and with the benefit of social media, we shall reach the promised land soon. It's physics.
Look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And there are lots of theories floating around about what has happened with UAPs. We have provided a process, Senator Rounds, myself, Senator Rubio, Senator Heinrich, there are two more, Senator Young, and there's another Democrat, Gillibrand, yes. And we think that given proper going through the process so no classified information is revealed, it'll be very helpful for the American people to see exactly what's there, because otherwise there are all sorts of rumors flying around.
That was Senate Majority Leader, member of the Gang of Eight, Chuck Schumer. Him and Senator Rounds are the ones that sponsored this bill, composing of the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Now, Chuck Schumer said, light is the best disinfectant, or sunshine is the best disinfectant. And I couldn't agree more, because if I am barking up the wrong tree and I am completely wrong about my analysis, then I want to know. I'll start covering crocheting if I'm wrong about UFOs. But right now, the indication is the U.S. government is covering up UFOs, what they know about them, the true nature of them, and they know a ton more than they're leading on. And it's in the responsibility of the U.S. government to set the record straight so that people like me can't glom on to what's occurring right now and run with it, if you will. Shortly, we're going to go into the November 30th press conference that I cited at the opening of this video. But before we do, I want to cover some Twitter exchanges that are quite interesting. Maya Benowitz states, I've been told that Biden is preparing an unprecedented address to the nation sometime next year following the passage of the UAP Disclosure Act in the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. And then she follows up saying, sounds a bit far-fetched, but I guess we shall see. To which analyst Matthew Pines responds, not entirely settled at this point. A lot of moving pieces. And then Christopher Warford chimes in and he says, my question has always been, if the Schumer amendment doesn't pass in its current form and is replaced by something else without teeth, do we still get said announcement? How does that work? Matthew Pines responds, the UAPDA, the UAP Disclosure Act, is designed to provide the political and institutional framework that makes it feasible for the President of the United States' confirmation. of UFO reality, in my opinion. But POTUS could decide tomorrow to give such an address, albeit it may be unwise without sufficient skids being greased. UAPDA is sufficient but not necessary. Christopher responds. Thanks for clarifying. Matthew Pines responds. Assuming UAPTA passes intact, Biden will have to make some announcement related to his UAP Records Review Board, which is cited in the Schumer rounds legislation. Nominees. Assuming it doesn't pass, Jake Sullivan has the discretion to recommend his boss selectively declassify whatever he feels is necessary given the larger imperative at stake. And here's another follow-up where Tom Thompson respond to Benowitz's claim about the potential Biden announcement next year. He writes, Maya, are you able to elaborate any further on your post? Maya responds, no. Now, I just want to go into who I'm citing a little bit just to demonstrate that these are serious people. Obviously, that doesn't mean what they're saying is accurate. I'm just covering their conversation because it's interesting, and I think it's plausible that they have some meaningful connections. And of course, even if they have meaningful connections, that still doesn't mean what they're saying is necessarily likely to be true. But let's just cover this because I think it's part of the conversation. Mayo Benowitz is a mathematical physicist, quantum cosmologist, AI ML developer, radical solar punk, agnostic Jew, and bootstrap artist, aspiring Time Lord and TARDIS engineer. Kind of funny. Okay, Matthew Pines is director, security advisory, Sentinel-1, national security fellow, BTC Policy Org, Physics and Philosophy at JHU, Public Policy and LSE, Geopolitical Tech, Cyber, Bitcoin. So, you know, as this is unfolding, it is very plausible that people will know stuff behind the scenes. Some of the conversation happening behind the scenes from people that know what they're talking about does end up filtering into our awareness, if you will. And just to be clear, Matthew Pines is known to be a very high-level analyst on the UFO topic in terms of like what's going on right now with legislation and so forth. He's actually been cited by journalist Michael Schellenberger for his analysis, not for what people told him, but for his analysis on the unfolding events that are happening. But anyways, here's another little conversation between Maya Benowitz and Matthew Pines that was particularly intriguing. Maya Benowitz said on June 7th, 2023, I've heard rumors from friends of friends who supposedly have been read in on a special access program that does biological testing of retrieved bodies. It sounds totally insane. Craziest part? All of the bodies have one thing in common, human DNA. To which Matthew Pines responds, I've heard similar intimations. There's a reason Grush, Elizondo, et al. Make a point to deflect on the origin of these craft, intentionally broadening the aperture beyond extraterrestrial. Fill in the blank with your preferred explanation that can account for that. Let's jump right into the November 30th press conference that I cited in the opening of this video.
The American people deserve to know as much about the existence in this universe as possible.
Now, what rational person that believes in freedom, goodness, fairness, scientific inquiry, and having control over their own destiny would disagree with that sentiment? And yet, that's the problem. What the intelligence community and the Department of Defense are doing, they are doing, it appears, everything in their power to give the impression that there's something really profound to hide, which is one of the reasons it is so imperative that this proposed legislation, that is the Schumer Rounds UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, gets passed fully, if not mostly intact, so that the process can unfold and we can reach some kind of conclusion about what's going on. Because as long as the government acts shady, withholds information from members of Congress, oversight committees, obfuscates, and gives the impression that they're lying, this is never going to have a remedy. And indeed, I fear even worse, that more and more people are going to start believing the government's lying as more whistleblowers come forward. So if it's actually true, what some of the so-called skeptics are adamant about, that this is all a social contagion, or some of them actually go so far to say a psyop. But of course, that's also any way you slice this is a huge story. But if it's a social contagion, and I would argue that is the best case scenario, then the U.S. government needs to do a thorough investigation so that we can ascertain how this social contagion started and put it to rest. Otherwise, I truly, sincerely believe this is going to get a lot worse.
This is not something that I thought I would get involved in when I first came to Congress. But quite frankly, the reason why I got involved is as we started asking questions, legitimate questions, the pushback we got is what interests me. Every time we pulled a thread and we stumbled on something, it seemed that we would get stonewalled.
That was Representative Moskowitz of Florida, and just as I was saying, it's as if the U.S. government is doing everything in its power to give the impression that there is a UFO cover-up, and behind all this secrecy is something truly profound, like the knowledge of non-human intelligence engaging our planet, recovery of non-human craft and bodies at the extreme. And so, as the clip I showed you earlier with the Senate Majority Leader, that is Charles Schumer, or Chuck Schumer, he said it the best. He said sunlight is the best disinfectant. But we're not going to disinfect if the U.S. government keeps fighting against providing clear answers to the questions that the United States Congress are asking.
I think the American people have a simple question, which is, if none of this exists, if this is all false, why at every turn are there people trying to stop the transparency and the disclosure? Why are folks who are in charge of committees, whether they are in the House or in the Senate, opposed to this disclosure? And it's that point alone that piques the interest, right? And that's really what we're about. This is not about whether there are aliens or there are not aliens. Right? Those are questions that I think remain unanswered, right? It's not whether there is stuff we have found here or not found here. Those questions remain unanswered. The problem is when we ask those questions, right, rather than being provided information that would prove it false, they stonewall the information. And that is what piques the interest.
I find it totally fascinating that the intelligence community, the DOD, has not yet provided information that would prove false the allegations that have been made. I find that absolutely fascinating. They've done everything but that. And this is just one member of Congress, but he's not the only person saying this. It's not like Representative Moskowitz or Representative Annaluna Polina or Tim Burchett or the others, and there's many of them, woke up one morning and said to themselves, I want to give the impression that the intelligence community is not cooperating when I ask questions about UFOs. Obviously, their response is based upon the behavior of the intelligence community and the Department of Defense. And so this is not going to end, in my opinion, because I don't think Congress is ever going to let up. I don't think people like Chris Mellon, Lou Elizondo, other insiders, and the whistleblowers are ever going to let up. The only thing, in my opinion, that will slow down all the people I just mentioned, their relentlessness in getting to the bottom of this, is if a proper investigation is done, or if this legislation doesn't pass largely intact, if somebody from the inside leaks classified information proving them wrong. This is going to come out one way or the other, and I strongly believe there is a cover-up, but if there's not a cover-up, the intelligence community and the DOD are more than capable of proving that if they really want to.
But at the end of the day, I think the taxpayers deserve to know where their money is being spent. the question we have before us is that, are we in an environment where the republic is being threatened by individuals and by people who are not elected to be able to withhold information from the public?
That was Representative Eric Burleson of Missouri, and I'll take the liberty to answer his question. Yes, there are unelected officials who are not willing to share information on UFOs with Congress and with the public at large, and with many members of government that are in a need to know but are being withheld this information, in my opinion. And part of the reason is because the U.S. government has been covering this up for so many decades. They've dug themselves such a deep hole. They don't know how to get out of it. And it's a very complex situation. How do you resolve a cover-up that's been going on for so long and has essentially become institutionalized? And I think the Schumer-Rounds legislation is the best solution because it will go through the government. It will be done in a way in which it makes the government solve the problem themselves, makes the government look like part of the solution. But if it doesn't go through the legislation, that's when we start flirting with catastrophic disclosure, which is beyond the scope of this video. But let's get right into a thread that Representative Eric Burleson made on December 2nd. Thread on UAPs. Before I was elected to Congress last year, I had a general idea of how the Washington bureaucracy functioned and the role of Congress plays in conducting oversight. But seeing it from the inside, let me tell you, it's worse than you can imagine. Everything you suspect the federal bureaucracy is doing, they're almost certainly doing. And it's nearly impossible to get a straight answer, which is why I'm so drawn to the UAP transparency issue. As I see it, to the extent that we actually believe in genuine representative government, getting some truth out relating to the UFO phenomenon and secrecy is important. We talk about the need for a democratic system to have an informed citizenry. Well, this is a major subject that one would think an informed and responsible citizenry needs to know about. The federal government spends millions of your tax dollars examining UAPs. We paid for this information. You, the taxpayers, own this information, and you have a right to know. You elect members of Congress to oversee it. If that's not happening, we need to change the way this place works, and not just for UAPs, although it's a fine place to start, but for everything. The time for transparency is now. DOD, CIA, DOE, and the rest of the three-letter agencies owe the American people transparency. No more lies, no more cover-ups. These agencies exist exclusively to benefit the American public. If unelected bureaucrats and defense contractors can shut down congressional oversight and ultimately your voice in Washington, then we don't have a real republic. And I'd suggest more members of Congress, as well as people in the media, start looking into this shady oligarchy and determining whether it deserves to exist anymore. Now, for those people out there saying the UFO cover-up is a bunch of balderdash, well, then the U.S. government has to prove that the allegations made by people like David Grush, Lou Elizondo, frankly, former DNI, John Ratcliffe, former managers of OSAP, Colm Kelleher, and James Lukatsky, longtime employee of the government who I think now works for Aerospace. I think it's called Aerospace Organization or something, which is tethered to the Department of Defense. He's long held a clearance. His name is Dr. Eric Davis. All these people that I just cited who have had or continue to have very strong security clearances and have worked for the government have said that UFOs have been retrieved and that they're of non-human intelligence. The one exception to that is the former DNI John Ratcliffe, but he said that there are technologies out there that we can't duplicate. And of course, David Grush has said we've recovered non-human intelligence craft, and a member of the Gang of Eight and the vice chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Senator Marco Rubio has said that he's spoken with people with high clearances who should know, maybe even still have high clearances, have worked for the government. They're saying that craft of non-human intelligence has been recovered. So if all of that is not true, why are they all saying that? And it butts up against what the officialdom within the United States Department of Defense are saying, like with the hearings with Ronald Moultrie and Scott Bray. I would argue it's because there's obviously a cover-up, and the DOD is not willing to admit to it. But former employees, some of them current employees, are willing to admit to it. So you have this ongoing contradiction. And in my opinion, it's only going to get worse.
Here's, again, what just doesn't make logical sense, right? Is if this is all nonsense, right? Then why are we seeing constant, from different areas of government, whistleblowers coming out with things that are credible? Why, as legislators, are we being stonewalled? Why does it feel like, just as we're making some progress, all of a sudden the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future come out to talk to staff or legislators that then all of a sudden aren't on board with more disclosure? And I think that's the American people who are following this. That is the same question that you're asking that they're asking. We see the Pentagon not being able to pass an audit for 6 years straight. Grush testified under oath that, part of these programs, these advanced technology programs, are being funded by overfunding programs in some areas of the budget or backdooring money. And so, again, we have been asking these questions, from the financial standpoint and from the transparency standpoint. And it's, Ryan, same question that you had. The intelligence community does not want to share any of this information with Congress. We're asking why? Why? And that it makes it appear that there is a substantial reason why they don't, not an insubstantial reason, right? It's not just maybe it's one of our new toys, right? And so that's, I think, why you see this group pressing so hard.
Now, the idea that the U.S. government, or elements of the U.S. government more accurately, are hiding their own technologies is actually not supported, at least by the most recent UFO report that dropped in October. As Merrick von Rennenkampf underscores in an episode of The Hill Rising that aired 2 days ago.
And I just want to quickly point to the government's own UFO report came out last month in October. Pardon me, that was 2 months ago now. And it said very specifically that there are some objects out there that have concerning indicators such as high speed and unconventional performance, but they're not ours. We've deconflicted them with our programs. They're explicitly saying they're not ours. They also say that none of the most recent reports have any connection to a foreign adversary. None. You can look that up. So if they're not foreign and they're not our own secret tech, why is this so deeply classified? And the sources and methods excuse that they frequently put out is nonsense, right? If a Chinese fighter jet flies within 100 feet and conducts an unsafe maneuver in front of one of our airplanes, that footage is declassified and released like that. But for whatever reason, when it comes to the UFO videos and data, that stuff never sees the light of day. Why is that? Why? That's the question.
So in essence, the government is telling us that they're not our technologies. They haven't connected them definitively to foreign technologies. And yet, as von Rennenkampf stated, when we get footage of like a foreign drone coming close to a military airplane, that footage is released very easily. But when it's a UAP, it's like pulling teeth to get them to release any footage or data associated with it. In that light, the following clip is from Representative Matt Gaetz, from the press conference from November 30th. Here he speaks about an incident where he tried to get his fellow members of Congress and himself, I think, but that will be settled with the video clip, access to a video of an unknown, and it underscores the reluctancy that was presented when they simply wanted to see footage of an unknown.
But what I can tell you is that when Congresswoman Luna and Congressman Burchett and I were at Eglin Air Force Base, and there were hours of frustrations where they didn't want to let us see a photograph taken by a pilot during a test flight. When I saw the photograph, ultimately, thanks to Chairman Rogers weighing in with the Office of the Secretary of Defense, I can tell you it is of nothing that I'm aware of having existing in our arsenal of assets. And I'm on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years. I'm not unfamiliar with the things that we have at our disposal, and it was not something that I could classify as something that we would possess or a capability that any of our adversaries possess, because we also keep pretty close eye on those capabilities as well. So that leaves the question rather open.
So the fight in Congress over the Schumer-Rounds amendment is heating up. In the following clip that dropped yesterday, December 4th, and I'm wearing a new shirt, it's a new day, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer stated the following, and here's the clip.
Finally, on UAEs. While it's not related to China, House Republicans are also attempting to kill another common-sense bipartisan measure passed by the Senate, which I was proud to co-sponsor with Senator Rounds as the lead sponsor, to increase transparency around what the government does and does not know about unidentified aerial phenomena. Unidentified aerial phenomena generate intense curiosity for many Americans, and the risk for confusion and misinformation is high if the government isn't willing to be transparent. The measure I championed with Senator Rounds would create a board, just like we did with the JFK assassination records, to work through the declassification of many government records on UAPs. This model's been a terrific success for decades. It should be used again with UAPs, but once again, House Republicans are ready to kill this bipartisan provision. Now we're going to get the NDAA done this year, just like we have for more than 6 decades. But there's still some more work to do.
So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer verified the opposition that is occurring from House Republicans to get this measure passed through so that we can have UFO transparency from our government. Why anyone within the United States Congress that are tasked with oversight would actually push back against a bill demanding oversight is beyond me. Well, not really. I think they are pressured by aerospace companies and by the intelligence community because those are the elements within the U.S. government and if you will, potentially, in a sense, quasi-U.S. government that don't want this to pass and be enacted. In Christopher Sharp's latest article in his publication Liberation Times, it's written, and I quote, Sheehan pointed out that the only opposition to the UAP legislation comes from 5 influential Republican politicians, Senators Wicker and Mitch McConnell, Minority Leader of the Senate, and Representatives Mike Turner, Mike Rogers, and Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. And Sheehan said, 98% of everybody in Congress is in support of this bill. It's just these 5 guys holding it up. Chuck Schumer himself yesterday, December 4th at 7:02 p.m. tweeted, House Republicans are trying to kill the Senate's bipartisan measure to increase transparency around UAPs. The measure I'm championing with Senator Rounds would create a board to work through the declassification of government records on UAPs. We'll keep working to get this done. Christopher Mellon responds, if Representative Rogers opposes having a special UAP committee formed in the House, then all the more reason for him to support the Schumer UAP records review provision on behalf of accountability and transparency. So Lou Elizondo chimed in on Chuck Schumer's tweet that we just covered, and he wrote, "Go get 'em." And then he responded to two people. Stephen Warren wrote, "Sorry, but this will require an alternative method of disclosure, a plan B or a catastrophic disclosure. Government is broken," to which Lou responded, "Have no fear. We already have a plan B, plan C, and so forth. We now know where the vulnerabilities of the beachhead lie and where the incoming fire is from. This is extremely important and valuable for disclosure." Then another person wrote that he responded to, "Finally, you appeared publicly at this critical moment," to which Lou responds, "Working very hard behind the scenes. This isn't over yet." 60 Minutes producer Graham Messick wrote in response to Christopher Sharp, who wrote, "It now seems like a political drama is playing out. Despite my pessimistic tweets from earlier, I now think it could be game on." And the producer of 60 Minutes, Graham Messick, writes, "UAP Disclosure Act. It would be quite amazing if 60 Minutes did a deep dive into what's been going on recently with David Grush and UFO whistleblowers and the UAP Disclosure Act. If they do tackle this, let's say in 2024, that could thread the needle, muchacho." Dr. Gary Nolan, world-class immunologist and professor at Stanford University, chimes into Chuck Schumer's tweet and states, "I've been advocating for greater transparency around UAP for over a decade. Now, Senator Chuck Schumer and Senator Rounds, in a bipartisan fashion, are pushing through an unprecedented bill that will bring it all out into the light. House Intel and Armed Services are trying to block it. The UAP amendment would create an oversight committee of public hard scientists, economists, social scientists, religious leaders, and ethicists to look into this issue." And that's referencing the review board that is put into the Schumer-Rounds UFO Disclosure Act. Now let's continue his tweet. "If there's nothing to hide, why are the aerospace companies and the DOD trying to kill the bill? Shout out to Representatives Luna, Gates, Motzkowitz, and Burchett and others in the House for their work on this. This is about the science and the right to understand. Anyone with an interest in good science should advocate for passage of this bill." I think I'm going to leave it there. Everything's in motion. Things are getting interesting. Do not forget that there is a new upcoming interview coming with whistleblower David Grush. He is going to be interviewed on News Nation on December 11th by Elizabeth Vargas. And I think it will be live. And so he will be asked many, I would hope, new questions related to what's been going on very recently. Also, there is a presidential debate tomorrow, and there's a lot of talk about whether the presidential hopefuls will be asked about what their policy is on UFO transparency. So that should be really interesting too. And I'm actually thinking about doing a quick video tonight to publish tomorrow on that, but we'll see. But I wanted to give a shout out to all my patrons, my YouTube members, and those that have given me one-time donations, those that have bought merchandise from me. I just want to say, you light a fire underneath me, because this is a lot of work. And every time you support me in this way, quite honestly, it does inspire me, it does motivate me, and it does help me out tremendously. And it makes the odds of me putting tremendous effort into it go up, because I'm a human being, and I respond to things like that just like everybody else, and we all need currency, if you will, to exist in this world. So thank you so much, everyone, and everyone who just, even if you haven't done anything monetary directly, but you watch my videos or you share my videos, that is also extremely well received, and I'm grateful for that as well. Absolutely. So to everyone that's watching this right now, thank you so much, because I really couldn't do it without you. You light a fire underneath me, and I need that fire. Please do not forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron. You can become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below. Or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.